everybody, I'm Jay Cormier from Off the Page Games, and this is How to Start a Board Game Company Now. This week I'm doing something that I should have done months ago, so if you're following along like every week as you're going, you're too late. No, this is something that had to have been done months ago, and it was hiring a rules editor. Now, I was probably full of a bit too much pride, and I always thought I was a pretty decent writer. And so I never hired a rules editor. I just wrote the rules, and Sen and I kind of went back and forth and tweaked it, kind of made it as awesome as we could. And another thing we didn't do is we didn't blind play test the game. Yeah, I'm not saying these are good things we did. I'm telling you these are mistakes we've made, and maybe you can learn from it. Yeah, it was unfortunate. We didn't blind play test it with the rule book. And so the challenge was when we sent it out to some of the reviewers, some had some extra questions because it wasn't super clear. So much so that one of them played it so wrongly, incorrectly. See, my grammar, I need help with this. That it impacted their play and they didn't like the game. And I'm like, oh, but you didn't do this at all. I'm like, I should have done this earlier. So in this session, I am now going to go through a conversation I had with the rules editor after they edited the rules, and I had some questions, and I'm going to spend time also asking the rules editor, Jeff Fraser is his name, fantastic rules editor, questions about best practices with rules and tenses and all sorts of things, when to capitalize, when not to, and feel free to scrub through because it's pretty lengthy, and it is me going through my rule book. But I also put in the link below a link to both my old rule that I created that I thought was awesome and sent to my reviewers, and then the new link to the new rule book, so you can actually kind of compare if you're interested in seeing the differences of what a rules editor can do for you. So take a look. All right, so I'm here talking with Jeff Fraser. Jeff, you're a rules editor. So first of all, I guess just tell everybody what is a rules editor. Why do I need a rules editor? I know how to write.
Well, everyone thinks they know how to write until they have someone else look over it. When I write stuff, I always try to make sure I have an editor look at it afterwards because the process of writing and the process of editing are very different. You look at it in a very different lens. And so when I write, I know I'm not catching everything that an editor will catch. And for board games especially, you really want someone who is going to come in with a fresh perspective on the rules, like someone who's not very close to the game, because you as the designer have played the game so much that some rules are going to seem sort of second nature to you. They seem obvious, they seem intuitive. But when you have someone who comes in and has to sort of learn the game from the rules as they are, and then reconstruct those rules, they're going to ask you things like, oh, should this card be face up or face down? If I discard this card, do I reshuffle the deck at the end when that deck is empty? Things like that often get missed in the initial rules draft, and my job is to come in and make sure that all of that stuff is there so that someone who's playing totally blind knows everything they need to.
Now, I imagine being a rules editor is different than just being an editor. I mean, I imagine that you must be a gamer, that prior to this, you played a ton of games.
So I am a gamer. I play a ton of games. I'm a game designer as well. I do some dev work, so I'm in and around the industry for sure. I do think that there's certain terminology that is pretty standardized across the industry that's good to be familiar with. But in terms of like the process for editing, it is very similar to technical editing for manuals and stuff. Like if you work on engineering manuals, it's very much the same thing where you have to introduce someone to a series of terms and concepts and then walk them through how to use the thing.
Right.
But I would say that technical editing is very different from what I would call like narrative editing, journalistic editing, where your focus is more on that it reads good and you're trying to make a literary piece as opposed to a technical piece because here our focus is much more on clarity and understanding first, and then Not that making them read nice is not a thing you don't want to do. You do want your rule book to read well, but it's a secondary priority.
I totally agree with that. And now, so before we just jump into it, because you're gonna take us through the mind management rule book, and I have some questions, so this will be like fresh. None of this other than this is prepared. But my last one is, what do you find is like the top maybe 2 or 3 things that it's always an issue in rule books that you've had to edit?
Let's see.
I'm gonna guess one is something about tenses or pronouns.
Yeah, pronouns. Pronouns are a thing. It's mostly a consistency issue. There's a couple different ways you can set up your tenses and your pronouns, but it's very easy to switch back and forth. Like for example, I caught myself on another rulebook I'm doing when I was referring to enemies that were moving around the board. I would refer to the enemy figure both as an it and as a they. In different situations, like I would say, like the enemy, shoots their gun, or the enemy moves to its destination, and I didn't catch myself doing those two things separately, and making those two consistent was tough. So yeah, there's a lot of issues with that kind of thing, but I would also say that slip ups in regards to the tense you're using or the pronoun you're using will largely go unnoticed. So if you happen to switch from a second person you pronoun to a third person they pronoun at some point, most readers aren't going to catch that. And a lot of the time it won't actually even interfere with the clarity of what you're reading.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the important thing is you got to decide up front what kind of tenses you want to use. Personally, I use second person as often as I can.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's where you're basically you're using imperatives. So you're saying on your turn you do this, as opposed to on their turn a player does that. Yeah. So as long as you decide that up front and then stick consistent with it. There are games where a third person is better. Particularly, I find like social deduction-y type games really benefit when you have a lot of different players and there's no clear active player. Right. Like if people are doing a lot of things simultaneously and there's nobody, because normally you would refer to the person whose turn it is. Right. You don't have that. But yeah, in terms of other things, structurally, I have a structure that I like to work with, and it's sort of an open debate in rulebook editing right now, whether you should front load the concepts in your game. So some rulebook writers, rulebook editors like to have a section right after the setup and components that basically defines a bunch of concepts you're going to use in the game. So for mind management, for example, you would have a section that says what is an action, what is a what is location, agent, what is a location, things like that. I prefer not to do those because I prefer to have those definitions come up as the player gets to them. Yeah. Because when I read a rule book, I find that if I get front loaded with a bunch of concepts, I get overwhelmed and I don't retain any of them. Okay. And then I go into the rules and it assumes that I know those concepts, and then that gets confusing.
Okay. Yeah. Let's jump into it. So what we're going to do now is you're going to share your screen and we're going to go through things. I've highlighted things that I have some follow-up questions to, and you've already put some notes on. So let's go through this together. So this will be a first time for everybody here watching.
Yeah. So this is, by the way, this is a great tool here, but Google Docs has a built-in table of contents feature. Where
I've never used it.
If you have set all of your styles to be different levels of
headings,
and then at the end you just press a button and it populates all of this for you.
Where is said button?
It is under Insert, Table of Contents.
Oh my goodness! Right now. Of course, yeah.
And then every time you make a change, you will have to refresh it after you create it. So I usually don't do it till the end.
And then just to clarify, you're recommending that's just there so I have access to find things. That's are you recommending that in my book? I would have that?
Links so that you can just click on this link
and look at that
directly to that page, which is they're the same links as the one down the side.
Right.
Here.
Right.
But this is the main reason I try to set up everything carefully with headings and subheadings, is because then I can just navigate really easily to the section I want to go to. And actually, while I was editing this, I was working on, when I was working on the full game, I would very often have to go back up to the first game and just make sure things were consistent. So it's very nice to be able to say, okay, so I'm on the recruiter's turn here. I'm going to go back up to.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's start from the.
Okay. So we've got story so far.
Yeah, I like even there you tweak some of that wording, which is great.
Yeah. I try to do just grammar and stuff for narrative editing. So I did. I mentioned that I renamed a couple of the components. We can talk about the specific ones as we get to them.
You talked about the recruiter cards versus the potential recruiters.
Cards, I think was probably the one that the biggest change.
I had called them recruitment cards, and that feels good, but you bring up a good point that it just gets confusing with recruiter and recruitment cards. It's just too yucky.
Yeah.
I think that's a technical term in the rules editing world.
And there's lots of options for some kind of this thing like this. Like, I don't think that feature cards is necessarily like the greatest name out there.
Yeah.
But I did think something was a good idea to separate them. And then likewise, so the recruiter cards are split up into these blue cards that the recruiter gets, and then these brown cards that the rogue agents get. And so I just renamed those.
And I'll have them separated art-wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then even the secret board, I had called the little miniature version that a secret board. You called it a secret map.
Yeah. That was sort of, again, in the vein of, because if you talk about a board, and basically people are going to think that they're moving a figure around on that board, right? Fair. So they're going to, and a board with spaces, they're going to move that figure around. Whereas a map is something that you write on, you draw a route on.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. And it's a little bit more immersive than a board. A board is gamey, and a map is something that actually exists.
Yeah, I considered changing game board to also game map, but I decided against that because there's so much else that's on the game board.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Everything else is good. I love it.
Okay, so all right.
You use important, so that's a cool little call out.
Yeah, so I just use these notes. There's different ways that you can actually do this in the rulebook. Like sometimes people will have a little stop sign with an exclamation mark icon, or sometimes people will have like an actual title for this reminder. So it'll say something like the game board, and then it'll have the little notes underneath.
Yeah.
So whichever way ends up working best for your layout.
And I like that you changed locations. That's better than spaces. So that's great. I like it. They used to be called blocks. Like you go to a different block.
City blocks, yeah.
City blocks. But then when we came up with, there was a term at one point called a mental block. And that just started to confuse things. So I'm like, oh, let's get rid of that.
Yeah, terms like block are... they're really thematic, but unless it's really clear, because the word block can have several very different meanings. So you've highlighted
several, because it's just because it literally is two. Every single it's always two. Yeah. Okay. And what is the rulebook rule for when you use numbers versus writing out the numbers?
Always use numerals. Generally speaking, so this is different than so for AP style. Most editors will be familiar with Associated Press style or MLA Chicago style. One of those style groups, and all of them say that you write out numerals under 10 and above 10 in rulebooks, and in a lot of technical editing, you always write numerals just because it's clearer.
It jumps out a lot easier.
Sometimes the only time that I will use words are starting a sentence, because that still feels kind of awkward to start a sentence with a numeral, but I just try to avoid starting sentences with numerals if I can. Or this one's more important, if you're using the word like one as not a number, like if you're using it as a figure of speech,
one of us,
still write that out. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. The next green thing I had, I'm wondering if there's any confusion, because if you read just for some reason that bracket going forward, these will not be used in training mission. It almost implies the following will not be used in the training mission.
Yeah, I think you're right there. That's a good catch. Turn all main the unselected action cards.
Yeah, so I actually have to call it right out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
I keep trying to scroll with my mouse wheel when you're sharing your screen, so it's funny.
Yeah. Okay. So the recruiter card. Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure whether this would go face up behind your screen or whether you had room for it.
There's just an issue of potentially somebody sneaking a peek. If
Right.
it's face up, there's no need to see it, and so I've always played it face down, and you can reference it at any time.
Yeah, you don't. Do you think that the player would need to know what their mind slip can do for them, though?
They need to know, so they have to have looked at it.
Right. That's kind of information I'm not sure I would be able to remember. Whereas later on, we say that the recruiter cards, or the feature cards rather, have to be face up behind your screen. But that I think you could not have behind your screen.
Those don't have to be either.
Yeah.
I highlighted. There's a whole section coming up about that. So this one I would say, and just place it behind your screen. I don't know if you're gonna have to tell them.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, and then they have the option. That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
It's all good. Okay, so my issue with this step...
I don't love this. Yeah.
My issue is that we don't tell them that they can't step over their same space yet. And they have to move 5 times, and they don't necessarily know that rule.
Right. Yeah. So this is an awkward situation because this doesn't normally come up that someone is taking actions during setup, right? Normally setup is its own thing. You set up the game. And my concern here was that because of this, the recruiter has to understand how their basic action works before they start playing, right? And normally you would set up the board and then teach the game.
Yeah.
So what I think the best way to deal with this would be to have the recruiter do this on their first turn as opposed to during the setup. But
yeah, there's other setup things that are happening after this.
Yeah. So then in that case, I think then the only way to deal with this is to have them have to say that, like, before you do this, make sure you read how to do a step action.
Yes. And not on the action card, but actually in the rules, because the rules is more clear.
Yeah, okay. So then I don't know what's on the action cards because I didn't have access to them. So
I see.
So then
it's a very quick, tiny summary of what the rules are.
Okay. So then I will definitely and first. Yeah, I think that I don't want to repeat how to do a step action here because I think that'll be redundant, and I'm worried that there might be hidden inconsistencies in there. But I think directing them to be like, okay, if you're the recruiter, go look at this, and this tells you exactly how to take a step action.
Is it worth re-mention? There will be a duplicate of the mention, but worth mentioning in this block here as a reminder: you can't step. You cannot visit the same station more than once. Twice, yeah.
Or can only visit each.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Good. And when you say ref, anytime you say ref, just scroll up a teeny bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is that's a marker for your layout artist to replace with a page number.
Okay.
And usually a section heading as well, because there's InDesign has a cross-reference feature where you can plug in a reference to another heading, and it'll auto-populate the name of the heading and the page number.
Cool. And
that way, if the page number changes because the section moves, it'll keep hold of that reference and change the page number to match.
Nice. Good.
So, and I put it in triangle brackets so it's easy to control.
Yeah, it's great. Your question here, they don't have to be,
okay.
But should is probably, like, you probably want to, if you wanted to put a tip in here, you would be wise to spread your agents around the board as opposed to bunching them all up in a corner.
I think that's probably obvious. I just wanted to make sure there was no specific rule forbidding agents from starting on the same location.
Nope.
Because so then, yeah, I think that's probably fine as is. All right.
Time token's great. I called it timer token for those listening and watching. So time token, it makes more sense. Oh, I had here. Should we add and resolve alert icon as a second turn recruiter as a part of the result round overview?
Yeah, I had that initially, and I took it out because I wanted this overview to be as simple as possible.
Okay.
And I'm sort of on the fence about it. Because I would say
might get lost in there.
And reveal recruits as opposed to, because the alert icon is basically just there to remind you to reveal recruits.
Well, yes, but in future shift envelope packages.
Oh, okay.
There is more to do.
Stuff happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
It takes one action, advances the time token, and resolves.
Yep. Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Sidebar is sidebar. You don't mean like literally off the side because these are actual rules. You just mean like a different colored box.
This just means it's in a box. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of time, depending on the layout of your rule book, this might be beside the main rules. It might be underneath the main rules.
Cool.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a sidebar.
Yeah. Like it.
Okay. Actually, I'll leave that one there because some of those notes are more for your whoever lays the book out.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I added this. I don't know if you knew, but I added orthogonally. You just had. I don't know if you assume that.
Right. Yeah. No. That's that. You're right. That's
okay.
Good.
Cool. For this one here, it says after you advance a time token, place your discarded mind slip token beside the time track. Now, the next part of the sentence really helps to kind of clarify it, but I wonder if there's any vagueness there to show the rogue agents when you use it. Like you literally put it beside the 8 or beside whatever turn it is. That's where you put it to permanently remind players that they use this mind slip token on turn 8.
Yeah, so I had some issues with this because I didn't want to say put it beside the current time because I think that will confuse people between the time that it is when you start your turn, the time that it is when you end your turn.
Mm-hmm.
I can say beside the time token. I'm a little worried that they might think that means they move it with the time token, but I think that's probably
you might have to add it. Then another sentence. This will always stay there, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Token. Place your starter mindset token. Let's say on the time track beside the time token. And that should say that it's not with the time token. It's on the time track in that current location.
Yeah, I like that. Yep.
Okay.
That's good.
All right.
Here, these are the two different recruiters, and it says that you can jump. Now, originally they were jump, but we're conscious of trying to not make them feel like superheroes that they can jump over this.
Sure.
Technically, like in a game sense, they are jumping, but that's why we changed it. It used to be a mind power, I think, just a mind power. But even Matt Kinton
I could say that. Teleport, but so the thing is, I wanted to make it really clear that you're not landing on the space in between.
I know.
Because the way it read before when you said move, I read it as you would write down a number on the space in between.
Yeah, that's valid. So thematically, it's called a mind slip because they can use their mental abilities to slip through that one space unseen and get to the next space.
Okay, so you want to say like slip to a location?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
It is a mind slip. That's the name of the token. So.
Yeah.
Good. That's exactly right. So I had highlighted mayhem tokens, and that's great to call out that they're only using the full game, because the training mission, for those that are watching, you don't use a mayhem token. So I already even had a reviewer ask me, what the heck are mayhem tokens? Because they hadn't read through the rest of the rules. They just read the training mission.
Okay.
Scroll up one little bit. Oh, there's this jump again. It was jump again. Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
It was the same thing.
Oh, so this was just maybe a misunderstanding, because you had 3. And I'm like, it's only 2. You change it to 3.
Oh, so I actually changed the example so that when they go to their second turn, she visits something that has 2 features on it. Because I wanted to highlight that you could recruit 2 people from the same location.
I see.
So this example sort of like covertly shows that you can grab 1 guy from one location and then 2 guys from another location.
Oh, I got to redo my whole example to find a spot where that works then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I hadn't. I just grabbed the pictures. I wasn't actually paying attention to what was on.
I see.
Yeah.
That's a valid, though, to show that. Yeah, that's valid. Cool. The next one. Is there an issue with the fact that they have never heard this term, confirm mental notes, before? This is the first time they're reading it. Is there?
Oh, yes. This is above that, isn't it? I'll just put a ref in there. And then when the term comes up, it'll direct them directly to that page in case they haven't heard it yet.
Okay.
This is such a minor thing, but formatting wise, I think you had put most of this in tables, which looked nice as far as like if you're blind testing, but it's a real pain to put that into InDesign because of the way text flows.
Oh.
So I took everything out of tables for that reason.
Thank you.
These horizontal lines are like non-characters, so they don't show up in InDesign layouts.
Gotcha. How do you draw those? How do you draw lines like that?
It's just insert horizontal line.
It's so simple. Okay, cool. Okay, this one is. So you added this, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was.
It's. I mean, a good chance is weird. It's just like there's a chance.
Sure.
Because it's like, who knows if they ever visit this space again?
Yeah.
Now, this next part with a may. So this one, I don't know how we can make this more mandatory without making it mandatory. Because if they don't do this, they will experience a different game.
This is the basically mandatory unless you have a reason not to.
Yeah.
Word I use.
Okay. We found that with that one reviewer that they didn't do this part, and so they were missing out on a ton of information and not really understanding that when you get a miss on a request, on an ask, and you say, no, I've never been there, they weren't doing anything with that information, just moving on. I'm like, that's a lot of information. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So sorry, just to jump back to this one. So there's a chance you can intercept in there. What is the actual reason for, like, what would be a better thing to say to motivate why you care about locations they haven't visited yet?
Because that means they can never double back. So it's gonna start pigeonholing them. So you're like, oh, he didn't go this way because he's already been there, so he must have went this way.
Right. Okay. So it's more about identifying locations where they could possibly go.
Because they couldn't have gone this way.
Okay. This will help you see places they might move in the future. Is that a more?
Yeah, that's better
too?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. Lovely. What are your rules about capitalizing?
It's totally wishy-washy.
Okay.
It's the kind of thing where, so what I'm trying to stay consistent with is if it's a single named object, like the time token, that gets capitalized. But if it's a generic object like a feature card, it gets uncapitalized. But then there's exceptions like the word feature itself, which I decided to capitalize because I wanted it to stand out from like I wanted to be clear that you're using a game term now. When I talked about the time or a feature,
Right.
I decided to capitalize those. Whereas location, I decided not to capitalize because I thought that was specific enough, even without the capital. Because you really the goal is to use as few, exactly as many capitals as you need to, and because if you overuse capitals, then everything's capitalized and it impact.
And then why is like step all caps?
That was because
I have my thought of why
the
it is.
original. So I just wasn't sure. In the original, you had step action always capitalized.
My consistency was that anything that was an actual action, like ask, step, capture, reveal, was all full capitalized.
Right. Yeah. So I started with that, and then anything that referred back to one of those actions, like if this was referring to a step, which is what you do on a step action, I wanted to make it clear that that's the same thing.
Yeah.
So we capitalize those, and so like mind slip token is capitalized as well because it refers to a mind slipped action.
Got it.
But you could go the other way and just Control F, change these all into like just first letter capitalized.
No, that's how I like it too. So good.
Yeah, I think the full caps works,
especially when it's an action you can take. That's one of your actions. Like capture action is all caps. So I like that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, full game. It says we recommend continuing to use the training mission setup reminder card. There is a setup card reminder card that's not for training mission.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It's on the other side of that card.
Right. Okay. Okay, so it's one card and it's double-sided. So yes. I'm actually going to change this one to say follow along using the training mission side of the setup reminder card. And then I will just
look at that. See how fast that was? Because you had it all indented. Oh man, that's so good.
Follow along using the full.
Well, it doesn't say full game. It just says setup.
Okay.
It actually says you're being set up.
Okay. So then I'll just say follow along using this. Okay. And I imagine that works in all of these changes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And so your thought on this is that I think it's a bit different than, I'm not sure if it's different than what I had. I'll have to recheck. But so for those watching, we have a training mission and then a full game. And even Jeff and I were talking about the challenges that this has, because if in the future you wanted to just play again and refresh yourself, you kind of still have to go through both bits.
Yeah.
There's no way around it, really.
There's two considerations here. One is, I think if you had the full game set up, you were duplicating the page count. So your rulebook is going to get like significantly longer by having two complete setup sections. Because this is going to be 2 to 3 pages as a full setup. And the second thing is, if you do the full setup again and just insert the new rules, then it's harder to highlight the stuff that's changed.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas I really want to draw attention to these are things that are now in the game that were not in the previous game. So if you're like skimming or something, you don't miss them.
Yep. And they have the card that goes through every step. So that
actually the fact that you say that makes me feel a lot more comfortable with it, because I was sort of I was like, use the training mission reminder card and then open it to this page, and the training reminder card or the setup reminder should be more than enough to help them through the full setup.
The mayhem tokens, you say at the end of game area setup, each player.
Because I've divided into game areas,
which is great. I like that. So that's usually the very first thing that's done. So I don't. It's the mayhem. Okay. So maybe at the start of the game area setup, just say that. Yeah.
Yep. And then I will, because these are theoretically chronologically in order.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I'll put up to the top.
Okay. Cool. And the next one, I imagine you meant for the next one down there is recruiter setup, not game area setup.
Yes, you're correct. That is an error.
I found a mistake. I get $1 off. Okay, and then this is you're going to place your... Oh, so
Yeah.
I found the wording here awkward because I had to read this 2 or 3 times. Like, what? During setup, this rogue agent's place your... Like, I'm like, until I'm like, oh, I get it now that it's my game and it confused me.
Right.
It almost was it's almost like a U thing, like a directive. Because if you just read, place your second mind flip token.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
I'm like, so grammatically it wasn't fit. I couldn't make it work in my head for 2 attempts. I'm like, what?
So let's try pacifying it then. Does that clarify that for you?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
This is all good. This is all good. Okay. Immortal recruiting, you kind of, I think, again, it's because my rules weren't great, but you misunderstood how this works. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, let's see what do you have. One of the 2 locations. I think recruiters should. So first of all, when they do place 2 immortals, like you got that part correct, on matching features on the board, you take a recruit and it goes in the. If you can find a picture of the board, the top right corner of the board is a list of all the features, the little picture.
Oh, okay.
They play it up there.
Got it. Okay, so it's not placed on the location.
No.
Okay. Okay, and so then you can never use that feature again anywhere. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So you had another example here where you could potentially.
Yeah, that totally screws up the other example. Okay. Placing one.
I added that one green thing. Discard that feature from the immortal recruiting area. Feature card.
Right. That makes sense. Once you roll, immediately reveal contact with place one meeple from supply on the matching feature icon. Top right of the game board. Then discard that feature card from the immortal recruiting area. So
leaving it face up is not like super mandatory because you do have a recruiting meeple on that thing, but it is more visual and bigger.
So just because I'm wondering, this should probably go with any of the feature cards you've exposed from the recruiter, right? Because it's like you're saying this is ruled out as one of the cards that they have, right?
Correct.
And I had asked later down, I think, whether there was a specific location for this.
There is not.
Okay. So for
just somewhere not near the immortal recruiting area.
Let's see. Okay.
So the more than once is somewhat true, but not at the same feature. So there's 2 immortal recruiting cards or 2 feature cards that face up. So it's possible you could do one of each.
Right.
So twice is the most you could ever do. Is it better to call out twice or more than once is fine? Because it's literally only twice.
I think more than once is fine. I'm okay with it being generic there.
Okay.
You know what? I actually don't even think that part is necessary anymore. It's very obvious that you can only do it twice in the whole game.
No, not in the whole game. That's another thing you got mixed up down. That's coming up down below.
The immortals get to replace the cards.
That's right.
Okay. I actually read it that way originally. That's so funny. I read it that way originally, and then I went back and I realized it said the recruiter's feature cards, and I was like, oh, they mean the feature cards behind the screen, not the immortal one.
See, people, this is why you get a rules editor. Because even the rules editor misinterpreted it.
All right. So then, okay. Up to twice per turn, because you do still only get them at the end.
That's right. Yes. That's better. Yeah, that's definitely better. That's even better too. That's so funny. I'm like, yeah, that's good, and then you change it. I'm like, oh, that's even better. It's great.
places it on the dream.
Yeah, not in the at the yes.
Top. Oh, there it is at the picture. There's an arrow there.
And should you say game
You
board?
should look at the pictures.
Should it be game board just to be consistent, or
yes, it should. And actually, I had game board uncapitalized, so let me just fix the other location. This is pretty handy too. You can.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
This. I don't want that one though. That one. Okay. We go back to where we were. We were in full mission here, and I believe we were in recruiter's turn. Okay.
Okay.
All right. This is.
So now this won't be bus. This will be whatever the second.
Right. It must be something else. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in this case, it'll be the palm tree.
Okay.
In the example that I've given.
Is that got a special name, or is it just palm tree?
It does. I can't remind it off the top of my head. Psychedelic. I can't remember.
Okay. In order to make an extra move, she must place. If she moves her immortal at the top right to an adjacent palm tree location. Since she already has an immortal. In order to make an extra move, she must place a step token. She decides to reveal her position on turn. Blah, blah, blah. It allows her to move her immortal to the second.
And is it now you say, and this is probably copying from what I said, so it's nothing wrong on you. She decides to reveal a position on turn 3, but she's not writing a 3. It's not a confirm mental note. She's literally just placing a step token, which it can be interpreted as step 3 for most obvious players.
Place a step token. She decides to place it on her position on turn 3.
Right.
This allows you to move from one of the same palm tree location and place a new group meeple. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
And then this is now draw. So it's not if you have fewer than 3. If you have fewer than 2 immortal recruiting feature cards.
So if you lose the feature cards behind your screen,
that's it.
You don't get them back. Okay.
Correct.
Fewer than 2 feature cards.
Oh, right.
Under immortal recruiting. I'm actually going to even go back up to recruiter's turn. Draw a new immortal.
Thank you, yeah. Immortal recruiting feature cards? Or
I think just immortal.
Well, it is called immortal recruiting on the board.
Yeah, I just want to keep these as short and snappy as possible. And I think that identifies which feature cards we're talking about specifically without. We have fewer than 2 feature cards under immortal. Can you draw until you have to secretly look at each? Nope.
Nope, we can take all this out, I think.
These are now features. Your immortals may use to contact recruits.
In future turns, or because it's the end of the turn, is that even necessary or no?
Yeah, I think it's unnecessary because it is the end of the turn. There are no feature cards left in the deck. You may not draw new cards for your immortals.
Mm-hmm.
If you have no feature cards...
This has never happened in the history of playtesting this game.
Okay. Never mind then. No, we won't worry about that. You can no longer contact recruits with them. Right?
Well, just to be clear, you can't draw a new one, so you can't contact that. Like, there still might be 2 face up, and you still might have ones behind your thing.
No cards under.
You just don't draw anymore.
That's it. So that
Portal recruiting, and the deck is empty. You can no longer acquire factors your portals can no longer contact recruits. There we go.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Just because I get people asking stuff like that too, like what happens if I run out of cards? Well, the obvious thing happens.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. If there are any left in the game,
I added this.
I would rather do the optional thing. Use an ally card.
And then why is use a free action ability optional?
Optional.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
We could even say use and discard an ally card.
Mm-hmm. Of which the game starts with one, but more will come.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was a little awkward because I didn't want to like talk too much about the shift packages up high. It was very clear that you're going to have more allies at some point. Matches there are 3 future cards. Okay, so
I like that you just changed the shakedown because I actually literally at the same time had already done that on my end. So
yeah,
perfect. It used to be called push and shakedown for those watching. It started with push, and then it was confusing. We added this extra ability to it because push wasn't that attractive of an ability, and we added the shakedown. And then push and shakedown implied that you push first and then shake down. But thematically, that's not really true. You'd actually shake someone down, and then once you're done shaking them down, then you'd push them. And so then, like, yeah, let's just call it shakedown.
and shakedown and push really didn't have the same ring to it in that.
No, it didn't.
For some reason. Yeah. Okay, so 3 feature cards. What's the issue here?
Do we have to call out it's theirs specifically? Just make sure. I mean, we didn't say immortal, but
choose any feature on the board and ask if it matches any of the 3 feature cards behind their screen.
Yeah. Perfect. There is no specific spot, no.
Okay.
Good. Taking. What worry about timing at all? It has to be before recruit. Yeah. So the Black Ops Dolphin. I'm just worried about the timing because.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So when you. Be like when you ask the question, right?
Yeah, at the moment, like it's almost like before you ask, say you're going to use a recruit for the dolphin.
Your answers.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Activate this ally to force a recruiter to place step tokens at all locations. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Because you don't want them to answer and then go, oh, well, we're using the dolphin then.
Yeah. You just mentioned this because I think I probably
this is pretty garbagey.
Okay.
Once the package opens, its contents are added to the game. So I added that. The tricky part about it's added to the game. Yeah, I guess it is added to the game.
Well, let's just deal with this one first. Each
each game. Right. Then we don't need that, or?
Yeah, I don't think we need this. Maybe each full game. Decide the lost opens or next shift action. Okay, what specials are 5 is the game.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess. Here's what I'm stumbling on.
I could say maybe added to the game.
No, they are, but here's why I'm stumbling is because there are when you open a package, sometimes the contents will actually be added permanently to the game regardless of future choices. But some will go back in this package and you will be choosing packages and you only get to play with these contents if this package is chosen. But some are taken out. Like if there's a new rogue agent, for example, that is now permanently in the game and you have that always, regardless if you choose this package or not.
Okay. So, okay. Knowing that, I'm probably gonna have to rewrite this section a little bit.
I gotcha.
So I'll do that after this call.
Yeah, that's right.
Just because I'm gonna have to play with it for a while. But yeah, okay. So and because I think I asked about that further down. because you were saying there's some that has the number inside of the shift package and some that doesn't. I'm guessing the stuff that doesn't is the stuff that's just like permanently added.
Yes.
The stuff that's on the shift packages, and so then the psychic asset cards refer to only the shift material that is optional as opposed to all of them.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't, so it won't list that new rogue agent on the side. And we've changed. FYI, I guess obviously it's important, but they're not called psychic asset cards anymore. We found that every single one of these shift packages will come with a mini comic book written by Matt Kint, and so it's going to. And the front cover is going to see, you're going to see that through the window of the package. So that'll tell you which box to open. Okay. But then when you pack it back up, you're going to flip the comic book over, and on the back page of the comic book is the psychic asset list, which we don't call that anymore. It's just the back of the comic. So
it's just the back of the comic. Okay. Yeah. Okay. When you.
That's right.
Okay.
So
like the front of the shift package is see-through then? Is that how that works?
Yep. Yes.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, all right.
And so that will make it,
because I saw those descriptions of the psychic asset versus the comic book or whatever, and I was confused about that, so I kind of just removed it, I guess.
Yes.
But that makes more sense.
Got it.
Okay. And then so this is once the package has been opened. All right, so that's sort of irrelevant now because I understand that the stuff that's in the packages and stuff that's not. Okay. Okay, so this stuff about playing the shift campaign. So I wasn't clear on, like, do you have to play the campaign?
Well, I mean, it's their game, so they can do whatever they want, I guess. So I don't know how mandatory we tell them how to do this, but the designed way of playing the game is that you would play the campaign, and but that would infer that you need the same person to be the recruiter for the campaign.
Yeah, I guess that was sort of I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get 2, if not 4, on the back of the rule book. I don't know what you call it, like a little score sheet or something, kind of like how Pandemic Legacy on the back, you keep track of your wins and losses.
Sure.
I want to have at least 2, and if we could fit 4. So you could have 2 to 4 games going at once with different people being the recruiter, and you keep track.
Okay.
Of your wins and losses, so that you're like, oh, this is the game where I'm the recruiter. Okay, so then we have these packages available to us.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just add a note. You can have. At a time with different players.
And then I guess that whole decide thing is if the very last note is once everything's open, you then get to play however you want.
Right. But there's no set end point. I didn't think there was, but I wasn't sure if there was supposed to be, and it just wasn't written down.
Yeah, it's it's just I guess there is no end point, I guess, as far as the campaign. There's no like you won the campaign. Because it's just the shift. That's why it's not legacy. It's just, or even campaign. I'm not even sure if we should call it a campaign or not. But I guess that's the word that most people would associate with this. But it's just like playing the game multiple times with a shifting balance based on the types of components and extras you have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and you're fine with just because people will probably ask for an endpoint, and I don't really explain that there isn't one. So it might be worth it to just come up with a sort of arbitrary endpoint and then say, like, you can either use this or just play until you want to.
I'll ask, there'll be more work on Matt Kint, but one idea I had a while ago, and like this would be pretty cool, is to have 2 actual sealed envelopes at the end. And if the Mind Management wins the final game, then they open their envelope and it'll be a little mini comic book explaining how they take over the world. And if the Rogue Agents win, they open a thing and they get to read a comic book about how they take over the world.
Sure.
Or safely.
I mean, because you could also just say that the campaign's one ends the game after the last package is opened, kind of thing.
Well, not last package. So if the game would end if somebody needs to open an envelope and they don't have one to open.
Right. Okay. Sure.
That's when the campaign would end.
So we'll add that. Nope, that's not what I want. I want... Where's my add comment button?
Yeah, where'd it go?
Normally it's over here.
Yeah.
Uh,
Insert.
I don't actually know where that is.
It's under insert, but it's grayed out for some reason.
Oh. That's very weird. Okay, well, I will highlight in yellow then.
Yeah, that's weird.
Campaign is would open. None left. Okay.
And
Yeah,
anytime we can call them pack.
Where you have lost 5 or 6 total games, right?
That would be true, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And anytime we can use the word package instead of envelope, I think at the top we used envelope. That again was probably me.
Okay. Packages. Quick.
Because in the retail there'll be cardboard like tuck boxes, and in the deluxe there'll be like game trays.
Okay. 2 packages. Yeah, sure. Okay, and so all of this was okay.
That's good, yeah.
I think the way that I've worded this, the main thing is that it eliminates checking who is ahead in the campaign.
I see.
And it just, because I thought that like with this part, this sort of effectively works in whoever is ahead in the campaign is going to have fewer packages total to open. So if you have someone who's if someone is far ahead and then they lose 1 game, they're going to get to choose their psychic assets, but they can only choose 1 anyways because they only have 1 open.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, they're however far they are ahead in the game is just going to give them fewer options.
Yeah, yeah.
Shift packages. And
then because the psychic asset card's gone, number 1 in that list would be just lay out the shift packages because the see-through window.
Components in the shift package. Okay. Yeah. No, like I said, I'm gonna have to.
No, I wouldn't lay out the components in the shift. Just literally lay out the boxes, and you would see the backside of each comic book, which would have the list of the components.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that should be very visual, like it's like because it'll hopefully remind players like, oh, that's the one that has that component in it. I'm gonna use that this game and blah blah blah.
This is kind of it. Does the psychic asset like say any rules on it, or are all the rules on the cards themselves?
Correct. It's just a visual contents list.
Just visual list. So if there's like tokens or something like that get introduced, they're related to a card that explains what those tokens are.
And that card would be in there.
Yeah.
In one of the components, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
That might be a second thing. I'll have to quote. You have to quote me again for going through all of the shift components, because that's where the rules are on the cards for those components.
Yeah, if you want me to go through all of and I can do the base game components as well too, like component editing is another thing I do. So yeah, I can quote you for if you can. I have the full components list.
I do, but it's not nicely editable like this. It's all in like PDF and Corel Draw.
Oh, you don't have a spreadsheet or something with
all the text? I do not.
Yeah, I can still do that. Do you have them? You have art for all of them, or like are they
not for the shift yet? No, I mean it's all prototype art for the shift.
That should still be fine. If you can just give them to me as like PDFs or some exported file, and then I'll give you a list of notes, basically.
Cool.
Like just a Google Doc that says like on card X numbered whatever.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I will have to. I probably can't get that done this week.
That's way less important now. This was important to get this done. So I should have done this. I probably should have started this whole conversation by saying I should have done this, what you're doing now, 2-3 months ago, so that when I sent it out to the reviewers, they had this set of rules instead of my set of rules.
Right.
All right, that's it for this week. Thanks for sticking around, watching the entire thing. And we'll see you next week. We're getting really close to launching the game now, so there's lots to be done. I gotta go. See ya.